I'm Luke Timmerman, the founder and editor of Timmerman Report, here at the Bio CEO and Investor Conference in New York. And with me today is Dale Schenk. He's the CEO of Prothena. He's a scientist by training, and interestingly, he recently went through an experience of being a patient himself. He was recently diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And so I'm curious, Dale, can you explain how that experience of being a patient has altered your view on drug development?
Yeah, well, I think in the biotech industry, we always say that we put patients first, and we do. That's why we do what we do. But when you are a patient with, and you've gone through a serious situation, it changes details, and the details matter. So, for example, you start beginning to think, how will a given patient view a particular clinical study design? What's important to a given patient? What's really meaningful? Not what's statistically significant at the end of a clinical study for approval, or what will regulators view as important, or even what clinical investigators view as important. You hone in on what patients view as important.
I thought you made a good point in the earlier session about Alzheimer's disease and how caregivers who treat patients care about whether the patient can brush their teeth or feed themselves, not so much the clinical definitions that matter to doctors and to the FDA and to companies.
Right, exactly. So in Alzheimer's disease, we have a metric we use, which is called the ADAS cognitive instrument. In Parkinson's, we have the UPDRS. The patients and the caregivers don't really care about those endpoints at all. Like I said, they're intellectual instruments, and they're a valid way of assessing how a patient's doing, but they're not meaningful in the patient setting.
But now this gets to questions about what is the value of a medicine. And this is a very hot topic in the industry. The industry's taken a whole lot of heat in public about pricing practices and whether it's connected to value. Do you see any constructive conversations or productive changes happening in the industry around pricing and value?
Well, going back to the specific situations, we all do actually have quality of life instruments in our clinical studies, so we do look at it, but the regulators don't view it as pivotal. So the data are there. What I would argue is that we need to have a constructive discussion with all the parties involved. And this isn't just about pricing, it's not just about the regulators, it's everybody coming together and saying what is meaningful to patients, what can we look at to judge what's important, and how can we judge if a drug is working in a real-world setting. I'm not saying do away with the metrics that we have, they do work, but pull in the other metrics that are more meaningful to better understand the value.
Now, last thing, when you say everybody, you mean patients, doctors, payers, drug companies, FDA?
Yes.
That's everybody.
That's everybody. And you're starting to see regulatory groups like the FDA do pull in patients into advisory panels now. They'll usually have a patient or into discussions. And you're starting to see patients put together, work with clinical investigators to produce white papers. We just had that happen in our field in light chain amyloidosis for NEOD1, where they put together white papers saying that BMP should be used as a primary endpoint.
Sounds like a lot of people got to come together. It's not going to be easy, but wish everyone best of luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.